I had the lines on mute. So we are now green and good to go.
Oh, okay. We're now in the air. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the West Basin Municipal Water District Engineering and Operations Committee meeting and special meeting of the Board of Directors. With that, we'll have a determination of the quorum. So, Mr. General Manager, can you see if we're all here?
Thank you, Committee Chair Alvarez. I'll start with you, Director Alvarez.
We're here.
Director Williams.
Here.
Director Houston.
Here.
Director Deere, President Deere. Director Gray. Okay, it appears we have a quorum of 3 directors.
Okay. Any public comment?
Okay, I understand we do have one person here in the audience with us today, Mr. Gus Malkoon of DR Consultants and Designers, Inc. And he'd like to make a public comment in regards to agenda item number 5A. So if you'd like to take his public comment now, we would give him 3 minutes to make those remarks. And while we're queuing up Mr. Calhoun, am I saying Malkoon? Am I saying your?
Yes, Malcolm, right.
Malkoon, thank you. If there are any members of the platform who would like to also make a comment, please do raise your hand on the platform and we'll acknowledge you for that public comment as well. So with that, I'll turn back to you, Director
Okay.
Alvarez.
Good afternoon, Mr. Malkoon. You're going to speak to item 5A, I understand.
Yes.
So if you would also want to speak to that item after you listen to the presentation,
Yes.
you're welcome to do that.
Okay.
Because sometimes you're speaking to an item and there may be material presented, which is material you might want to address. And
Whatever you wish.
it's your call.
I'll speak after you make the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so with that, we'll turn to the platform to acknowledge anyone who may like to make a public comment. I don't see anyone raising their hand at the moment. So I will trust that we have no additional public comments at this time, Director Alvarez.
Okay. And I don't believe we have any presentations.
We don't have any presentations, but if I may, I would like to make a few remarks of my own.
You're welcome to make.
Thank you so much, Chair Alvarez. And so I'd like to just, take a moment to acknowledge and recognize Pride Month during today's committee meeting. This first week of June marks the celebration of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex community, the LGBTIQI community. This month is enjoyed by many as with festive parades and flags of rainbow colors designed by artist Gilbert Baker, signifying gay pride and diversity of the LGBTQI community. Many in the community and those allied with it use this flag to symbolize their identity and to provide support. The month of June was intentionally designated to commemorate the Stonewall riots of 1968 in Manhattan, New York. Reflective of the 50s and 60s and the sentiment at that time, many in the general public considered gay identity as a taboo or even as a potential mental disorder. However, not everyone shared those views, and some supported the gay community by standing against governmental oppression of such civil rights. Raids by law enforcement was routinely visited upon Stonewall Inn, the location of a New York City gay bar, which engendered a grassroots uprising in defense of the civil right to exist as a gay person in society. This 6-day uprising was a small spark that inspired many who would stand up and take part in this chapter of America's civil rights story. Today, Pride Month has become one of the biggest celebrations in America, and our constituent city of West Hollywood is a premier destination to mark this important celebration. Some may ask, why should a public agency like ours mark Pride Month as a noteworthy occasion to celebrate? And I would say we should not only serve our communities, and of course we provide a very valuable service to all of our constituent cities, but we should also value the richness of the diversity that is a vibrant feature of our district. And I, as general manager, making a small but simple gesture of acknowledgement towards such communities in our district is the least that I can do. And so with that, I find it to be my responsibility to embrace the diversity and uphold our common values of our district. Therefore, I wish to acknowledge Pride Month on behalf of our district, on behalf of our West Basin family of employees, and the LGBTQI community within our service territory. So with that, Director Alvarez, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so we are then on the action calendar segment of our meeting. And the first item, and actually we have two very similar items, but the first item is the award of agreement for on-call professional engineering services. So let's go ahead and have a presentation on that item, Mr. General Manager.
Yes, and we have our Manager of Engineering, Mr. Wendell Johnson, who is prepared to give a presentation and to provide staff recommendation, both for item A, which is regarding to our on-call professional engineering services, and if it pleases our chair to also segue into the construction management services, which probably would have a similar presentation. So I'll leave that to you to decide.
You were reading my mind.
Okay.
I consider them almost identical items.
Okay, fantastic. So with that, Wendell, please go forward.
Thank you, General Manager. And to be conscious of everyone's time, I've included both item 5A and item 5B on one presentation. They are similar items in the progress of the process of onboarding these consultants were the same. So if everyone could turn to page number 7 in their agenda package, and we'll get started. On the next page, page number 8. Before I get started, I'd like to thank my department. This was a full all the same senior engineers and supervisors were involved in this recruitment. And in addition, we use outside people from WRD and VAO. Okay, I want to special thanks to John, Joel, Veronica, Orlando, and Iris for their participation in this process. The on-call services contract is one of the tools that the district or the department uses to onboard consultants for various type of consultant services. Before us today, we have two contracts that I'm asking the board to consider. One is the on-call services for professional engineering, and the other is on-call services for construction management. The on-call services has been with the district since about 2006. And it has generally, it's been a contract, about a 3-year contract that we go out for a competitive solicitation. And we shortlist or pre-qualify consultants that we're able to get an additional RFP or a task order from them for some of the smaller jobs that the department does and the district orchestrates. Okay, and so typically in the professional engineering services, we use these people on call for technical studies, feasibility studies, and support services, preliminary design reports, project design services. They support engineering services doing construction. And on a construction management on-call services agreement, it's for pre-construction services, which include constructability review, estimates review, scheduling details, as well as the work that's involved in the construction phase of the project, right through project closeout. Next slide, please. Why do we use the on-call services contract? Okay, and it's basically we have the on-call services contract to facilitate timely response for shorter term projects with limited scope and budget. And this kind of shows the procurement process. Our standard procurement takes about 3 to 4 months. With the on-call services, procurement. On an average, it's about 2 months, and sometimes it's less time. And what this allows, the difference in the time is that we've gone out for a competitive qualifications. And what we've done is we've shortlisted, or we've pre-qualified these contractors. And so the behind the scenes type stuff has already been done. The insurance documents have been checked, references call has been checked. In this particular instance, we called over 100 different references during this process of this on-call process. Interviews have been conducted, rates have been pre-established, and many other pre-qualifying checks have been done. Next slide, please. We should be on packet slide number 10. Okay, and this is the 2019 on-call utilization. And this contract expires at the end of June. Okay, and basically just to highlight on the CM construction management on-call services, we issued 15 task orders for a total of about $2.4 million. AKM received 6 task orders, a total of $1.7 million. Boutique Air received 7 task orders for about $690,000. GEI also was awarded a task order for about $3,400, and MNS had 1 task order for $860. The engineering services contract issued 19 task orders for a total of about $2.2 million. AKM received about 6 task orders for a total of about $700,000. Borello received 6 task orders for a total of $770,000, as well as Hazen receiving 5 task orders for $625,000, and Tetra Tech received 2 task orders for about $118,000. Next slide, please. Okay, this is kind of a slide that represents the history of the on-call services agreement. Okay, in 2014, we had 17 people respond to proposals, both from engineering as well as construction management, and we awarded 5 companies with the on-call contract in the engineering, and 3 companies were awarded the on-call contract for construction management services. And this was similar in 2016, 2019, and 2022. We had 11 full response in this particular cycle of on-call services and in the engineering field, and approximately 10 firms responded in the construction management. We're asking to award 6 engineering contracts, and we're asking to award 5 construction management. A little behind the scenes to let you know how far the announcement for requests for qualification to reach. When it came to the construction management firms that are out there, we had contact with about 1,300 firms. Okay, and when it came to the engineering services, again, it was about 1,300 firms in there. We did some spot checks to make sure consultants received these solicitation, and they received it was clear and it had no issue. In addition to that, we did some solicitation. About 2 dozen or so consultant firms were contacted directly to make them aware that we were in the process of issuing the on-call services agreement for both engineering and construction management. In addition to of those 1,300s in each one of those categories, there are several dozen aggregators, and the aggregators that subscribe to the system are plan houses that may have private subscriptions with other engineering and consultant firms, and they send out through their own platform notification that this request for qualifications is available for them to respond to. Next slide, please. We should be on slide number 12. Okay, and I want to let you know that we had some extremely well qualified firms. Okay, that applied. Everyone that applied were qualified, and the process involved 5 independent reviews of the request for proposal. Two of the so there's 5 independent for each one of them, and of the 5 independent reviews of the request for proposals, one was an outside agency or outside company that did it as part of our procedures for procurement here at the district. And so what we're recommending here is that that we award to the top 6 in this particular category for professional engineering services, which in this particular case it's HDR Engineering, D&R Consultants and Design, Tetra Tech, Black & Veatch, Hazen and Sawyer, AKM Consultant Services. In this group, we have 2 new vendors that are in this group. We have, the district hasn't in the past awarded a contract to D&R Consultant and Design Service, as well as Black & Veatch when it came to the on-call services. Next slide, please. In this recommendation, we have 5 firms that we're recommending for the construction management services contract. Boutier Engineering was top rated, AKM Consultant Engineers, MNS Engineers Incorporated, MWH Contractors, INC, MARRS Services Incorporated. And again, in this list, there are 2 new consultant firms that we never used before. In this particular case, it's MWH Constructors, as well as MARRS Services Incorporated. And so at this time, next slide, please. I would like to read the recommendation and take any questions that the board or anyone else may have about this. And I will read both of the recommendations at the same time, or
Committee Chair.
You made the presentation, it's a dual presentation. I'm comfortable with that. Go ahead.
okay. The recommendation for item 5A is the recommendation that the board authorizes the general manager to enter into an agreement with HDR Engineering Incorporated, DR Consultants and Designers Incorporated, Tetra Tech, Black & Veatch, Hazen and Sawyer, and AKM Consulting Engineers for on-call professional engineering services for a 3-year term beginning July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025, with a total not to exceed contract value of $3 million to be split among the 6 consultant firms. And recommendation for 5B is that the board authorize the general manager to enter into agreements with Boutier Engineering Inc., AKM Consulting Engineers, MNS Engineers Incorporated, MWH Contractors Incorporated, and MARRS Services Incorporated for on-call construction management services for a 3-year term beginning July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025, with a total not to exceed contract value of $3 million among the 5 consultant firms.
That it? Thank you. Okay, so today we did have a member of the public that did want to speak to this item. Now that you've listened to the presentation, if you'd like to come up and
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, could you have the guest speak from the lectern there?
Yeah, I've asked them to come here, Director Williams, because we're still working on installing another microphone. And in order to capture his comments for the record, we only have this one microphone here. The other one won't be installed for a couple more weeks. So we've asked him to sit here so that we could pick up his comments.
Okay, well, you look like a staff person, so.
Well, I have public comment, a little card in front of him.
I don't see that.
You want to turn the card so it,
Should have known, huh?
Go ahead and introduce yourself again for our benefit, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and the board also, and all of us business staff. My name is Gus Malcolm. I'm the senior project manager leading the effort from DR Consultant and Designers. We are a small group business, and we are very excited to be selected, and we're looking forward to start receiving the first task order, and hopefully we'll give the best out of our team. We have a very highly qualified team, very experienced. I used to be a project manager at the city of Los Angeles. I have a lot of years of experience at the Hyperion treatment plant, and I dealt with West Basin a long time ago. So we are here to give you the best and to make the project successful. And I want to thank you again for the selection.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Question?
Do you have a question?
Yes. I don't have the documents in front of me, but who are the principals in DR?
So I can hear you. What was that?
Who are the principals of DR?
The principal is the lady Wanda Martinez.
I've seen you before.
Yes, we went.
We've met before.
Yes,
You know Love, Tom Love.
that's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, so, okay, everything's so fine now. Okay.
Just wanted to say thank
Okay, well, good to see you
you.
again.
Thank you for
Haven't
the opportunity.
seen you
Good
in
to see you.
many, many years.
Yes, just before you came on the board,
Right,
we met downtown.
right.
It's a joy. So glad. We talked about small business
Yes, we did.
and here we are. Wow.
So congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations and thank you for providing support to the West Basin team.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, with that, committee member questions. Director Williams, do you have any questions?
Yeah, how did we go about outreach to bring aboard some firms that have never done business with us before? Because the other names I see on here that I see them everywhere. You know, these guys are, you know, HDR, Tetra Tech, Black and Beach. Diane, you said this is the first time that they've done a construction, is this construction management? Black and Beach? They've done other work for us before, right?
Yeah, this is the first time that they would be on the on-call service.
On call, but they've done the big
Contract.
stuff.
And the same thing with HDR. They've done other work for the agency, but haven't been on the on-call services contract.
And for Black and Beach, who's the principal here?
I don't have that information with me, but I can, it's provided in their submittal.
See, Corollo didn't make it. What happened here? Usually they're,
You know, in this particular case, when one of a good story and a bad story, one of the good stories is that the agency has for a long time supported small businesses and local enterprises, and because of the, you know, they receive an extra 3 to 6 points, and because of that particular vehicle that we have, which makes sense, it works. They were bumped out of the top, you know, out of the top 5 or out of top 6 in this case. We had, someone was tied, so we went from 5 to 6.
okay. One last question. This is concerning MWH. That's an acronym for what? I've heard.
Memory Watson Harrison.
Right. Now, they've done work for us, right? Lots of it. Dollar amounts,
Yeah, it's
No,
not on the call.
not on call. So is it better to be on call or just out there?
In either case, you have they have the same opportunity, because the on-call is reserved for your smaller jobs, and anything that is larger, the district larger or requires expertise that may not be within the on-call services. We do public advertising. Case in point, the construction management services for PV lateral. Case in point, the construction management services for JMM Carson Phase 2 expansion. Those were all contracts that were publicly advertised, and they were awarded outside of the on-call services contracts.
Just a slight correction. I think MWA, I'm getting some information, was on the on-call like a few years back. So this is slightly different. MWH constructors. So there were some ownership issues that got taken over by Stantec. But a few years back, they were on. I just want to make that clear.
So there's this, the principals in MWH, have they done work for us under another name?
MWH has done a lot of work for West Basin in the past. The principles have changed. They're, I can't answer your question directly, but I think I'm getting the information as we speak. The principal at Black and Beach, your earlier question, his name is Jeff Neiman. And the principal engineer at MWH, Randy Lovin, he has done work at West Basin in the past, yes.
In the last 15 years?
Yes.
The reason I ask is because, as most of you know, it is very, very difficult to get work from these water agencies. And it seems like it's the same firms that get the work. And it's very, very rarely do you bring in someone new who's not from that system or network. And so let me just add another one in there. So where do you guys network with each other to find out where the best guys are, best teams?
Well, we did some networking at the Water Reuse Conference last fall. Myself and Barkev attended. We did some follow-up with some of the people that we met during the conference. Okay. In addition, we also did some cold calling from firms that may have sent us email, may have given us a phone call, as well as the more than 1,300 people that are listed on our procurement system.
So if I'm a consultant, new guy on the block, and I'm trying to break in, where do I go to shake hands with you guys?
Call us. Our phone number is on the websites. And some agencies have done that. Obviously, conferences, associations in that fashion. We meet new people all the time. And then most importantly, connect to our procurement system, to our website, and Derek Alvarez has great suggestions that we're working on into improving that further. So plenty of opportunities for folks to contact us, to establish, to connect and ask for a meeting, which we would accommodate. And then in addition to that, we tried to contact as many folks as we could to give them heads up and told them if they'd like to have a meeting with us, with staff members, look at what potentially could come from West Basin in terms of jobs. We've done that as well. So we'll go around.
Mr. Alvarez, Director,
Yes.
sir. You're a consultant out there. How do you go about getting work from West Basin? Or do you want to, did you ever want to work for West Basin?
I mean, I do have a direct answer to that. As a small consultant, I wouldn't even approach West Basin because West Basin is prejudiced for hiring a group of firms, which is the point you were addressing. And it's like, why bother? So no. And I knew the people here, you know, a lot of the previous engineers that were here, the general manager, two passed, and talked to them and saw them at a lot of conferences and so on, but it's like, why bother?
See, I went to.
You only have so much time,
Right.
and where are you gonna invest your time?
Right. I did the same thing. I was a consultant for West Basin back in the early days of yesteryear. That was before I became a board member, folks. Let's be clear. It's still tough. Break in here. Not just here, but in the water industry, period. It's really tough.
I think the gentleman today, VR consultants and designers, they're a good example of being able to break in. Their firm that we hadn't contacted us before, that they didn't necessarily done work for West Basin, but they submitted a good proposal. They did well on the interviews, and they came in with a high score. And, we made it through.
Tom Love came from that company, right? Right?
I'm working for.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
That's it. I'm ready.
Any other board member has questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. Just in terms of clarification, Wendell, I think you said that the intent of the on-call services is really for smaller task orders, if you will. And I would assume those are short duration type of work.
Correct. Generally, projects that have a consultant fee or construction management fee of less than $300,000.
And looking through the data that you gave us, and this would be packet page 10. If I look at the engineering services task orders and just do a quick average, your average task order is about 130,000 or 120,000. And if I do an average on one firm in the construction management, it seems like the construction management, you didn't really use a lot of your on-call consultants. It's about 100,000, with the exception then of AKM. And what happened there that we had one firm with $1.8 million worth of work.
AKM has been quite competitive, generally in their skills that they have, as well as in their billing rate. When you compare it to someone like Corello, AKM generally responded to every task order that we issued, and that was not exactly the case when it came to the other firms that were on call. We put a little bit of teeth into this agreement where it requires the individuals, the firms that are on the on-call services to respond each time, or at least send an acknowledgement that they are not going to respond. Because the whole beauty of having almost a half dozen firms on there is to ensure that everyone is competitive. And if I'm not getting proposals out of them, someone else could have been on the on-call list that would have provided us with proposals that would ensure that we are getting the best price possible for the work that's being offered.
So you said that part of the reasons they have competitive bidding rates compared to like a Corolla. But when looking at the table that you gave us, Corolla for engineering services had 6 task orders and they averaged about 130,000. Hazen and Sawyer had 5 task orders. Hazen and Sawyer would be another firm that tends to bill at that same level in terms of their rates. And they're averaging about 120. Now, AKM has had 6 task orders under engineering services where they averaged about the same as the others at about 120,000 a task order. And yet they managed to also get 6 task orders for construction management, one that came in at 1.8 million. That's an average of 300,000 each. And if you look at their combined total, they're almost at $2.8 million, where all the other firms are a lot smaller. I think my point is, you told us that the intent was to give smaller contract amounts in the ballpark of, you said 300,000. I think that's pretty high. You know, and the average, when you look at the average and take out the anomaly that AKM represents, that would be a reasonable use of the task order format. But I would like to see a list of all the contracts that, on-call contracts that they've been issued. I have a feeling that there's one here that's probably pretty big.
And also, Director, part of the task order is a general sense of what the district would like to achieve. And as a part of the respondent is providing us with their approach. Okay, and in some cases, when I've gone out for the same task order and I've gotten a response from one consultant, they've had like 1,000 hours more than the other consultant whose approach is a little bit different, and they're manning it with different levels of staff. Instead of a principal, they're using a project manager. Instead of a senior inspector, they're using a junior inspector to do the same work. And so in those instances, firms that load it too heavy with too many hours tend to be a little less competitive when it comes to the awards.
And if I may, Dr. Alvarez, I think your feeling is correct. There was this one contract with AKM that was higher on the high end, and that's why you're seeing that. So one of the 6 task orders here was the high one. And the $300,000 threshold, about a year and a half ago, we talked about the board about that, what occurred there. And we decided this go around to establish a threshold based on previous discussions with the board. And when we had the pre-proposal meeting, we mentioned that to the consultants as well. This is what we're looking at, $300,000 or less. So this go around, we're hoping to not have any anomalies where we do go out for a higher amount on these on-call contracts.
So that discussion with the board must have been before I got on the board. I've only been here for a little over a year and I don't recall that discussion.
We can come back with the date of that. It was
So-
a year and a half ago.
So if that's the case, how did AKM end up getting this contract that kind of breaks the mold, if I can use that terminology?
Yeah, it was on the higher side. They competed with the other firms and they got it.
Just one concern that I have with one of the comments that was made to kind of justify the differences in the award of these task orders. I can appreciate very much in responding to a proposal. Every firm responds a little bit different, and some firms may suggest additional work. But generally, most consultants and most responders tend to address the scope of work that's being requested for the RFP, because you want to be attentive to the RFP. You don't want to necessarily go out of your way to write a proposal that would have some other things, although it is done as additional services. Here it is, the RFP. If in this environment where we've got these on-call firms on, somebody comes in and says, well, you issued this scope of work, and when you guys issue the RFP, you send it to everybody on the on-call list, or you select a few on the on-call list? That's a question.
It's everyone on the on-call list.
So everybody on the on-call list gets the RFP, and they're typically going to basically address the scope of work and the request for proposal. So if somebody comes back and says, I think you ought to do all of this additional work, and you use that then as a basis for the justification of going with a much larger contract, because you already had that firm on board, it would only be as a consultant and as somebody who's going through that effort, I think, and just as somebody looking at this from the outside, I think it'd only be fair to say, well, we now have a revised scope of work, and you can thank somebody, but that should maybe be shocked to everybody. And at that point, you'd also be cognizant that the amount of the contract now is quite larger than is typically awarded through an on-call contract, and that maybe it would behoove us to go through a more formal request for proposal and open it up to the greater universe. Because back to Director Williams' comment, I know it is a fact out there. A lot of people would like to have the opportunity to at least know of the possibility. Not everybody's going to submit proposals. Some people are too busy. Some people are going to consider it at least a particular scope beyond what they could address adequately, etc. But everybody likes to be aware of the opportunity. And I do think that West Basin is not very transparent, and it's not a very easy agency to understand what opportunities are available. In your presentation, you mentioned that you reached 1,300. I have a very difficult time seeing how we reach 1,300 firms. But maybe you can expand on how you reached 1,300 firms.
In the, just to address that on two things, Director. With the RFP or the response that the district receives from the respondents on the on-call services, there is always, we don't accept it on a face value, meaning that there is always some negotiations on how they responded to the RFP, and it's requirement. And if you're dealing with public transportation funding, it's a requirement that you do not accept a RFP at a face value. Individual firms are registered with the district's online procurement system. There's a series of codes that they can check for the type of businesses or the type of services that they offer. And every time we go out for a solicitation, we check the areas that the codes that the firm should have in order to respond to this particular RFP. And so that number that we receive is a number that we receive from the tool that we have for procurement that says that, hey, you've checked code number 56 or code number 78, in this combination, there, we are sending this notice out to 1,312 organizations that are registered in your system.
I'm a little slow sometimes, so just my interpretation of that is that basically we have this system and the firms that are registered there that have checked off, they provide engineering services, they provide construction management services, whatever they provide. The assumption is that all 1,300 of those firms got the proposal or the request for proposal.
Correct.
So we didn't really reach out to them. We just put it out through our, and we only use one system. Okay? And I did address this issue previously of how difficult it is for someone that is not knowledgeable. Yes, I went through the system and I figured it out, and I went through in pretty excruciating detail at one of our meetings to say, this is how you got to do it. You got to click here, you got to click here, you got to click here
I didn't do that.
in order to get to the work opportunity. And there are firms that do that, and there are firms that have marketing staff, and they tend to be the larger firms and so on. So I do have a real concern that we do not make it very convenient for smaller, and then even smaller, for a great number of firms to participate in the process. I have no problems with the consultants that we use. I'm familiar with the firms. I consider them in high regard. They all have very high quality people. They do high quality work. None of this is to say anything negative about those firms. It is to say that it would behoove us to have a more open process. And I think that one of you mentioned that you're working on it. I'm not quite sure what's so difficult about just putting an additional tag somewhere right on the front page of the district's webpage that says doing business with the district. And you click on that and it says, here are the opportunities. And maybe it would behoove us to just issue a notice in the newspaper. We could put it in the Long Beach Press Telegram, or we could put it in the LA Times. In today's LA Times, there's an RFP issued by the city of Burbank, for I think some recycling water service. So that would make it at least other people more informed about these opportunities. But I do think that it would behoove us to open this process up to additional firms. And this is the second time, and it should not take this long to do something. It's pretty simple to go out there and just advertise it so that more people are aware of it. The process that we use, if I can address it, is very obscure unless you're very knowledgeable of the process. And it just doesn't lend itself to people doing business with the district. I very much support having on call because I do think it makes it easier for
Jurassic?
doing.
Oh,
Yes.
515.
I'm sorry, whoever's speaking, go ahead.
Speaking.
Would you like to take public comments?
Is there somebody that wants to speak?
Okay, it sounded like there was someone on the platform who was interested in making a public comment. So if you'd like to do that, please raise your hand or maybe acknowledge yourself verbally. Not sure if it was just an open mic, unmuted. We were just catching some unintended audio. Okay, doesn't seem like anyone is responding at this point. So perhaps it was just unintended audio, Director Alvarez.
Did you have some other comment you want?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
So, get exactly where I was. So the use of the on-call, type of, list is very convenient, it works, but it should be used for the intent that it is. It's for the smaller contracts, that doesn't necessarily warrant the effort that it takes to issue a larger contract. You mentioned 300,000. I think that's a pretty good sized contract myself. I like the idea of the smaller contract. And again, if I take out the anomaly of AKM, most of these contracts are in the $100,000 to $130,000 range on average. Some of these may be more or less, but I just took a very, average of the total number of contracts and the total amount of money. So I would like to see the work that's being done this way being kept at the smaller amount, under, let's say, 200,000 or under $150,000. Anything above that should go out to the greater community and give everybody an opportunity to bid on it.
We can revise the policy.
I think that may be something for the board to discuss, right?
Well,
If you want to
maybe when we
establish a board
recommend it to the
directive.
board, that you bring it back with a recommendation that it be under 150,000. The board can address that.
150 or 200?
150 or less. That's my comment. Do you have any comments on that, Director Williams?
It's okay with me.
What we can do when we go back to the full board, I can provide you with the information that you asked about, the size of the individual task orders for your.
That's fine. I think I know which one this is. There's one in there that they got for $900,000.
Contract for the construction management services for.
Yeah. CM services on the Casada Protection Project. So with that, and with the idea that, which is kind of separate, but it's tangential, and I don't really want to drop it because I think it's very important that we really move forward. And general, this is, I guess, address more to you, Mr. General Manager, to just move us so that we can put something on the webpage right up front, doing business with the district, and people click on that, and whatever we put that goes out through the listing service that we have would also then be standalone on our website. So that any consultant out there, or anybody, any vendor or any member of the public that wants to see what kind of work opportunities are available at West Basin can just click on there and they would see all the RFPs. We would still send it out through the service
Bidding platform.
that we have. But we will also have it just on the website.
And as Barkev, our Executive Manager of Engineering and Operations indicated, we're working towards exactly those improvements in response to the commentary that you provided last month. I regret to say that we haven't completed that process just yet, but I can assure you that we're working towards that end right now.
And we might want to consider some of these advertising in one of the local newspapers, maybe not the LA Times. It's expensive to advertise in the LA Times, but Long Beach Press Telegram or something like that, that has a fairly large coverage area. And I think if you do the Press Telegram, they're part of the Whittier Daily News. So you get San Gabriel Valley coverage and LA County or South LA County coverage that way.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. I think that's a fantastic suggestion.
Okay, and then you guys must have been reading my mind, because when I read the agenda, I said, I don't know why we do these two things separately. They're basically the same type of firms. Some, and most of them, if you look at it, they actually submitted in both categories. You had some that didn't. But the majority of them are submitted in both categories. So I would just prefer that we just recognize that fact that they're engineering firms and engineering and construction management firms, and have one on-call list, and have all the firms in that one list. So my recommendation would be that if we move this to the board and we move that one item, engineering on-call list, and it include both design and CM service. And you have the same number of, and the same firms that you've listed here.
So we could take that into consideration, confer with
I
our,
agree with that.
Okay.
Because when I worked for a firm that was a CM firm, and they wouldn't go near an RFP that dealt with design. And then there was a time when the design work picked up, and they changed the company's pursuit that went after construction management only.
Well, if you look at these firms, Director Williams, there's only one firm here that I know just typically does CM work, and that's Boutier. And the rest of these firms go back and forth, and they don't do both.
Well, those are probably still the smaller firms that will go back and forth. But if they were large CM firms, they don't chase design.
Like Tetra does both. They're a large
Well,
firm.
they're
Like Montgomery Watson,
they're
MNS, Corollo, Hazen and Sawyer. They'll do both.
right, because they are
They're full service
full
firms.
service firms. But there's some firms out there that do only CM. The firms that do only design, they're not full service. And just because they're not full service doesn't mean they don't do a good job, right?
Agreed. All the more reason
would-
for
I
why
would-
we
I
need,
wouldn't-
our outreach needs to change, because the firms that we got are not the smaller firms that you and I were just kind of referring to.
Yeah, but I still wouldn't want to kind of block it out like that. So I wouldn't want to. So you're either
Okay,
propose on this as a general engineering firm, or you do it as a boutique kind of firm. So I would rather that each, however you want to propose on the job, you'll be able to do it.
well, you can call it on-call engineering and construction management service.
No, just go on-call engineering, on-call construction management.
Okay. All right.
So just for clarification for the board agenda, we'll take these two items on the action calendar as separate items with
I
no
would.
recommendation from the committee.
Yeah.
Thank
Just
you.
like you did here, but you can make it as, I'm sorry, I didn't complete mine, but you can make it with a limit of 150,000 that we talked about.
well, we'll talk internally about that concept, and we will analyze it and come back with more information about that concept.
That's not what we're moving forward as a committee. The committee wants to move this forward as 150,000.
So, okay, so the committee is
That's
in agreement,
Yeah, we're in agreement there.
okay, to limit each task to 150,000 per task. Okay, I didn't want to, maybe I didn't understand that the two of you were together on that task, on that direction.
Yeah, we had a difference and we agreed that we'll do two separate on-call lists.
Okay, but the task shall be limited to 150K.
Well, that's because,
As a committee recommendation to the full board. Okay, thank you for that.
easy. I think.
And just in terms of just procedures, if the general manager and staff recommend going forward as currently proposed, is that an allowed item to be presented to the full board?
Just
So we have both, you know, what you're recommending and what maybe we,
Right. I have an issue with that because then why do we want to have a committee?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of a committee? I just wasted an hour of my time. I might as well have forgone this and we could have had this discussion at the full board meeting because that's the recommendation when it comes this way. So if we're gonna have a committee and if the committee reaches a consensus on how something should be moving forward, that's the direction that's been provided. It's not for the staff to say, well, we didn't like the direction, so we're gonna still try to do something else.
well, I'm not saying that it's about like or not like, you know, I'm just trying to understand what's the process so that I could, you know,
The
deal with.
process is that the direction of the committee is move it forward in a certain way, and that's the direction that's been provided. And then that's the way it should move forward from that point on.
Okay,
Yeah, there you go. We have design, construction management. So we have two. Right?
So if I may just put some parliamentary procedures in here and share that if the recommendation or the motion that you're saying is not going to be the one here, are you asking staff or are you proposing a new motion for it to be considered at the board? So that it would be two separate items with the $150,000
limit per task.
limit per. However, it would be separate items on the consent calendar with the recommendation.
The committee was moving forward to the board that the award of an agreement for on-call professional engineering services and an award of agreements for on-call construction management services.
Got it?
With it, understanding that the agreements that are going to be issued or the
Task order.
the task orders that are going to be issued under the on-call services.
Not
would be
exceed
not exceed
$150,000.
$150,000.
So is there a second on that motion?
I concur with.
Okay,
When typically we haven't made motions in, at the committee, it's usually a concurrence or
recommendation.
consensus.
yes. Okay, we'll revise the recommendation and have it on the consent calendar for board consideration.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next item on the action calendar. And this is the West Basin 30 and West Basin 31 Operations and Maintenance Amendment with Metropolitan Water District, new agreement with Golden State Water Company. Mr. General Manager, would you like to make that presentation?
Absolutely. We have Mr. Frank Fuchs, our operations supervisor, prepared to give a presentation and staff recommendation on that item. So please, Frank.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, directors. So the purpose of this board memo is to request approval for an amendment to existing agreements with Metropolitan Water District and a new agreement with Golden State Water Company. WB30 and WB31 are service connections that supply imported potable water from Metropolitan Water District to Golden State Water Company, one of West Basin's retailers. And these services are located in Del Air and in Hawthorne. And each of these services has a vault that's underground and contains a Metropolitan Water District meter as well as isolation valves, but it also contains a valve owned by Golden State Water Company. These vaults, however, are owned by Metropolitan Water District. These are per agreements between Metropolitan and West Basin that were developed back in 1960 and are included as attachments C and D in the memo. Golden State accesses these vaults approximately once every 4 months. And the vaults were constructed with round type 36-inch access manhole covers that need to be removed in order to access. And Golden State implemented a project to replace the round covers, which allow, again, entry into the vaults with larger rectangular covers that are 4 foot by 6 foot. And they also have a type of a spring-loaded assist to make it easier to open, and they're also larger to allow easier access. And Golden State replaced these to improve the safety of their operators that access these vaults. However, Golden State had not received approval for this work. They had not requested approval from Metropolitan Water District or West Basin. And Golden State has recognized this error. They're not disputing this. Metropolitan has agreed to allow the vault covers to remain in place with amendments to the original agreement between West Basin and Metropolitan. They've requested that the original agreements for these vaults be amended to pass on the liability and any maintenance related issues in regards to the modifications. And as a result, West Basin has developed an agreement with Golden State for them to take on the liability and responsibility for maintenance of the vault covers and any related issues resulting in the modification. So essentially, we're passing on those requirements on to Golden State with that same agreement. And again, the agreement with West Basin and Golden State also indicates that if it becomes necessary, Golden State will return the covers to the original condition. So with that, I'll read the recommendation. Staff recommends that the board authorizes the general manager to execute 1, an amendment to WB 30 and WB 31 agreements as provided in attachment A with Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. 2, agreement W 2995 as provided in attachment B with Golden State Water Company. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I would also like to mention that Kate Nutting, the general manager for Golden State Water Company, the Southwest District, as well as the Golden State Capital Program Director, Beth McDonough, are participating in the meeting online, and they're also available to answer any questions as well.
Question.
Director Williams.
Yes, where does our legal counsel stand on this? They opine on this?
Yeah, our legal counsel has reviewed these agreements, and they have approved the documents.
So what is is this something we should do?
In addition to these,
You're recommending that we do this, right?
yes.
Mr. General Manager?
Yes, this is simply passing forward the obligations that Met is imposing on us as a member agency onto our retailers, in this case, Golden State.
Thank you.
Is this Mets originating this? The way I read this was that Golden State is originating this.
But I believe Met is allowing for modifications to be made, but under certain conditions, but they cannot place those conditions directly on a retailer. They have to place those on us as the Met member agency.
Yes, but this was not originated by Met.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, it says here in March 2020, MWD's staff identified that Golden State Water Company had performed modifications. So this is not something that Metropolitan originated or came forward with.
Well,
So, I mean, unless I missed, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, I think the answer is you're right.
And so I meant is agreed, okay, if we modify the agreements, we're fine with. But this is something to really accommodate Golden State.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it quite well.
What is the question?
I don't think there was a question.
It wasn't a question, it was that you had made a comment that this is, this is something that should be done, et cetera. And the response that came back is this is something that was initiated by Metropolitan. And I'm going like, well, I just read the staff report. And that's not what the staff, at least that's not the way I would read the staff report. And so then I read that one section that indicates the other, that Metropolitan is willing to go along with the modification that Golden State has made to the facilities. They're really Met's facilities. Golden State made some modification, and Met said that's fine. There's some misunderstanding, but that's the way this reads. Read the agreement, that's the way the agreement reads, that they're willing to go along with the modifications that have been made. They're fine, I'm just clarifying.
Yes. Yeah, it was, I guess, I misunderstood. To clarify, Metropolitan Water District did initiate, basically, when Metropolitan Water District identified these issues, their initial response was, well, you need to revert back to the way that it was. But then eventually they indicated that they would allow these modifications to remain in place if West Basin accepted the agreement between West Basin and Metropolitan Water District. That was the only agreement that Met was concerned about. But in turn, what we're presenting also is the similar agreement between West Basin and Golden State to pass on those requirements.
So that's kind of confusing now. So we have West Basin in the vault, right? Do you have, Golden State has, facilities in the vault?
Yes.
And Golden State has facilities in the vault.
Yes. Well, the
Okay.
original agreement for the vaults was between West Basin and Metropolitan Water District. We have those original agreements. And a vault and a valve was installed that was to be utilized by the retail agency.
Okay,
And in this case, is Golden State.
Golden State. Because we don't have any,
We don't own anything, let's be honest.
yeah, we don't have a vault, right? I mean, we don't have any infrastructure for drinking water.
So, but the way the Metropolitan Water views it is that it is a West Basin vault.
Because that's how.
Because we're
water
the
system.
wholesaler.
Right.
Okay. So then what is the issue? I'm lost now.
Well, there was a modification in the vault, right?
Yeah, maybe I can do this. First of all, your question, yes, this whole thing started with a modification.
By Golden-
By Golden State.
Okay,
Golden
That's
State
the-
made a modification.
Golden State
get
made
that.
a modification, that's how this thing started. So there is a vault. Vault is owned by Metropolitan.
Yes.
In that vault, there are several entrances in a pipeline.
Yes,
Most of it is owned by Metropolitan, except for a control valve. Control valve is access, goes in, the retail agency goes in and controls the control valve. And so both agencies, Metropolitan Retail Agency has access to the vault. Does that make sense?
but okay,
And Golden State made certain modifications that Met had asked to be reverted.
Both agencies have access, they perform maintenance on in the vault. They both sent technicians there. Golden State did a modification on the access hatch and the ladder and a few other things in the vault without the approval of Metropolitan. That's how this thing got generated. So then Metropolitan came along and said, okay, we will allow this. You don't have to spend the money and get it back to what it was. We'll allow this on the condition that we sign an amendment to the old agreement. But the old agreement is not between Metropolitan and the retail agency, it's between Metropolitan and West Basin. So we come in the middle of this. And so any agreement modification that we would do with Metropolitan, we would have to pass that on to Golden State. And that's what we're proposing here today.
and we deliver water.
what we do,
Is it physically?
and what we do, what we do is, and this is typical, okay, Met owns everything. Met reads the meters. Met then tells us what the reading is, sends us the bill. We then take that bill, mark it up, and send it to the retail agent.
Okay.
Okay, we're a wholesaler. That's all we do.
That's all we do.
Very simple.
Yeah, so.
And the vaults are owned by Met, and everything in there traditionally is by Met. Yes, both agencies have to have access to that vault. Met as the owner of the vault and the supplier of the water, but the retail agency that's taking water for control purposes. Like I've said, so that's just the way it is. In this case, Golden State chose to go in. Apparently, they had a round manhole cover for entry. They put in a rectangular. They made some other changes. They decided they didn't like the why, well, they changed the alarm system, and what else did they change? They changed the roof slab, vault walls, etc. So they took quite a few
Liberties, yeah.
And to be honest, Met doesn't go by every day, so you have a window of opportunity where you can make modifications to these things till somebody notices it. So they did that. Then Met came back and said, hey, wait a second, you can't do all that. We want you to change it. And then there was discussions that went back and forth. And so the bottom line, as I look at it, is how much time did this cost us to do all this and to have our attorneys involved? Because Golden State chose to make modifications without telling somebody to a vault, to two. And if we ever recover those costs, our staff time and the legal costs to address this whole issue. I understand that Golden State paid the $280,000 to make the modifications, the physical work. But we would not have spent any time on this.
I could maybe respond to that, and we do not have that calculation. We could get that. But I guess for us, it was a customer service thing. We do, as you noted, Director, we do charge people. So there's a level of service we're to provide. This is pretty unique. We did spend some staff time. There are other mirrored agreements you've seen and you may see. That's just how it's working. So we'll see, maybe not to this level, but we will see other work with our purveyors. We do try to assist them. So for us, we didn't calculate these costs separately just because we sort of labeled it customer service.
I didn't think you could calculate the cost. I'm just saying that an action taken without informing Metropolitan or us then led to additional and quite a bit of work. If we're honest about what you guys spent a lot of time then going back to Med and saying, hey, can we work something out and trying to keep peace in the family, etc. That's my point. Is had they not done it in the first place, and we wouldn't have had to go through all these motions and we wouldn't have to consider this today. This is just kind of now, well, somebody did something that they shouldn't have done, and they came back and said, we're sorry, mi culpa, and let's work something out. That's all I'm saying. That's what happened.
And we did that, and our legal advisors say that what we've done is fine, so we can go forward. Okay,
Yeah, we cleaned it up after the fact.
and cleaned up. Okay.
Okay, so it's done. Just clarified that. All right, this one forward.
All right. Thank you for that.
Oh,
That's,
I have to apologize. I didn't ask if any other director had any question or comment. I'm sorry.
well, I
Director Houston
concur
still
that
with us?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
Board Member Houston. No, I don't have any questions. Just the same observation. At the end of the day, this costs our agencies some money to deal with this, even though it says no fiscal impact here. But what more can we do? So it is so noted. But thank you.
Okay, with that, we're done with the action calendar. And so we'll move on to the information calendar. The first item is the operational technical support, which really is a preamble to a contract that's coming before the board. So with that, Mr. General Manager, would you like to address it?
Absolutely. And you're precisely right, Director Alvarez. I think there was interest in the purpose and necessity of the technical support services for our operations. area. Staff to present today's item A, 6A, specifically due to that interest. And so we have Susanna Lee, our Senior Operations Engineer, who will deliver that presentation. So please, Susanna.
Thank you, Greg, and good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the board. As Greg mentioned, and the staff also have informed the board back in March that there is a need for solicitations for a new ops technical services contract. And original intended release date was in April. But in the interest of our new general manager coming on board, we just provided some additional time for him to understand this contract particularly. So staff is here really today to provide some more detailed and overview to the board on this particular item. And we'll, as you mentioned, that will be coming to the board for award of a contract in August. You can find a copy of the memo on page 52, and the presentations begins on page 55. Just to begin with some background, as you are well aware that West Basin is one of the first water municipal districts that provides recycled waters to one of the largest metropolitan city. And West Basin produces multiple types of recycled water to meet the various customers' needs and application. And unlike most other recycling agencies, West Basin operates one of the most complex treatment facilities. Hence, expert third-party consultants are retained and utilized to troubleshoot operational issues and to protect the substantial investment in and use of the membrane technologies. If we can turn to slide number 2 on the presentation, it points out that the purpose of the contract is to assist West Basin's operations in monitoring and analyzing the various treatment processes and technologies to conduct condition assessment and provide rapid operational engineering assistance to avoid system failures. On the bottom of that slide, it lists out the typical standing tasks on both category of the supporting areas. Just for your information, at any given moment, West Basin uses over $11 million worth of membranes, and that's just membranes alone, not including the systems, overall systems, to produce all the advanced water, treated water. And operational staff have been able to rely on this particular contract to rely on the industry expert as extension of staff. And more importantly, to provide that independent condition performance monitoring and evaluations of membrane technologies and processes. Their level of expertise are variables and crucial in helping West Basin staff to maintain and to optimize the membrane processes at its best and to ensure providing water quality that meets permit and our customers' specifications. Consultants are able to provide recommendations and alert staff of any necessary changes that are coming up with new compliance and regulatory requirements. And for example, they will play an instrumental role in helping West Basin to comply with the 2018 groundwater recharge requirement and oversaw some of the needed improvement that were made to allow West Basin staff to continue to inject recycled water to the West Coast Basin and under the new guidelines. In 2013, the scope of this service contracts was expanded to include specialized support for other treatment processes and infrastructure, including the disinfecting, tertiary facilities and solid handling equipment, and plus our distribution pipelines. This really allows staff to better assess and address operational issues associated with the unstable influent water quality that we constantly receive and has deviated significantly from the original design criteria that were put in place 20 years ago. And more so, really to address West Basin's asset management best practices needs associated with the aging infrastructures. all of this is really to fulfill West Basin's main mission. And as Margaret always reminds us each presentation, it is to provide a safe and reliable supply of high quality water to the community we serve. And what this mission means is that in order for staff and West Basin to achieve this mission is involved using best asset management practices, including shift from reactive maintenance prone to failures, for example, to a proactive maintenance strategy and to provide high level of service to our customers that we have been always strive to do. So going to slide number 3 to recap, here are some of the benefits for the service and contracts that have been provided. As I mentioned, has been served as an extension of staff and provide an independent third-party review of data. And allows staff to have access to expert knowledge of membrane processes that apply at West Basin due to our unique influent water quality conditions. It also provides that proactive identification of potential performance issues through condition assessment and analysis, which identify issues that are due to the change of design criteria. And finally, really to allow us to have that expert knowledge and expertise ready to act and rapid response on an as needed basis to address any water quality and performance concerns. The next 2 slides really highlights few of the most noted and important projects that were done under this contract. And when I mentioned operational issues, like I said, a lot of times you have CIP projects that got handed over to operations. They're designed based on a presumed set of design criteria. When it comes to the field conditions, they oftentimes, is different from the design. So a lot of the operational issues may come about after all the commissioning stage, and those conditions arise, and we were able to utilize this contract to help us resolve those issues. So under the membrane related support task, one of the key projects as part of the GWRL task order, we identified that for phase 4 membranes, we were constantly seeing high transmembrane pressure, and we issued this task order to really do a very thorough audit on the system and to identify areas where we can able to make improvements to the process. So the consultants were able to review and make changes and provide recommendations and make changes to backwash frequencies and even on the type of chemical that we use. As you can see, between 2016 to 2017, that's just part of one of the examples. You see the frequent high TMPs that are rising with microfiltration systems. After that change and improvement were made after May 2017, you see that flat line, which indicated very much more stable conditions and operation conditions. Number 2, like I mentioned, it was the groundwater recharge compliance task order that they were able to help to make those noted recommendations. And in 2020, we did have like a RO train scaling event. Originally, we were just thinking that it's part of typical scaling issues from time to time. But our consultant were able to help us to identify that this may be due to a chemical change of chemical usage of anti-scaling, and that may require us to do a very proactive changes to our use of chemical. And as part of that task order, they were able to do a membrane autopsy and identify and confirm that was the case. And we're able to make the necessary changes and minimize and eliminate further damage to our RO membranes. So at the end, we had to replace one stage of RO train number 3 at ECL and not really extended to satellite facility RO, reverse osmosis systems, and as well as our Chevron trains. So that's on the membrane side support task. And if you go to the next page, next slide, that is on the as needed operation technical support services task. And yes, as one of the noted project on the as needed task orders, we perform a treatment processes audit, and the consultant were able to provide some recommendations on where we're lacking monitoring with our treatment processes. And we provided those nice to have or should have, and those items were noted, and our operator were able to apply some of those changes and improve on our monitoring capabilities and provide features that we're able to use and to improve our process. And all this is because, as I mentioned, ever-changing, unstable influent water quality that result in our operational challenges, and as well as the design criteria is really different from the water quality that we're seeing currently. Another noted project is the Torrance MCC1 fire response that you guys, if we recall last year in October timeframe, we had a fire with one of the motor control center, and which resulted in bringing that MCC down, and we issued that task order, and they were able to come in and help us assess what the extent of the damage is, whether we need to do a full-blown engineering project that will extend further than just replacing of the MCC, or just replacement of the MCC alone. And last but not least is the Chevron on-site asset condition assessment and evaluation. So that's part of the request and required analysis that we were able to utilize this contract consultant's expertise to go on site to our Chevron refinery. We have a bunch of assets that West Basin owns. So as part of the original project, which was lumped together with other projects, we're not able to identify what the original value is. As part of the agreement, upcoming agreement negotiation, we need to identify what the original values are for those assets. And the consultants did extensive safety trainings, went on site and did the condition assessment of those assets and provided a values for the original constructions, and also provided an analysis to our team, to West Basin, and to determine whether it is the course going forward is to relinquish those assets or to keep on providing the maintenance needs for those. So I believe that's the end of my presentations, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Williams, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Director Houston, if you're still with us, do you have any questions?
No,
Before I
thank you.
begin? Okay. So you're out with an RFP right now that you're gonna bring back to the board for award, and this is kind of the overview of the RFP, and primarily it's for consulting services for membrane evaluation and recommendations on processes. That's about it.
As needed, it extends to other processes as well.
So, separately, can you guys send me the RFP? I didn't.
We have sent it.
I did send that to the two of you. I think there was a previous email I had asked for comments, but I will send it again.
All right, I apologize if you did.
No. I think you and I spoke after that, and you had indicated there's still
Yeah.
question about the need for this, and that is what led to my requesting staff to put this presentation together, and here we are today.
Okay.
But I will send you the RFP again.
And so if you look at who's done this in the past, it's basically just kind of keeping the firm on board, which given the work that's being done probably makes sense. So is this something that really is going to be open to a lot of folks, or by the time you look at the proposals, you're back to using Hazen and Sawyer, Corolla, SPI? And SPI is the only one that's consistent throughout these 4 task orders.
Currently, we utilize the same procurement routes. So yes, it's been advertised through Negometrics at this point, and we have spoken to other firms that other than Hazen and Sawyer about this upcoming RFP. I mean, that's RFP. So so I guess to answer your question, that depends on who open.
Yes. And so the intent of this is going to be basically a 2-year contract with a not to exceed $600,000 fee, and it's task order oriented.
Correct. Yeah, on the membrane side, there are some standing tasks. They help us to review monthly membrane data and review trends, as well as create dashboards. And they are also helping us to provide development of our membrane specs. And there are membranes that needs to be replaced upcoming. Also, we are looking at pre-qualifying new membranes for West Basin's usage. So there will be piloting work that we're looking at as part of this contract. And also, we're also planning to do condition assessments on the aging infrastructure projects that potentially coming up, because a lot of the assets are at the age of needing renewal and replacement. And those studies will provide give us an insight on the urgency and the priorities of the different projects.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that, directors.
Okay, then moving on, maybe we can do a quick overview on the next item on the information challenge, is the monthly operations update.
Okay, and we have Susanna Lee and Frank Fuchs are prepared to give that quick update.
Yes, for the compliance.
I'm sorry.
And Jamie as
Jamie
well.
will be for the
Okay,
compliance.
I'm sorry. I probably need some glasses. Jamie Malpede, our water quality and environmental compliance supervisor, is joining this conversation as well. Thank you, Jamie. Sorry for that omission.
Welcome, Jamie. Go to it.
I believe we're starting with Susan.
And just as a full recovery, thank you all for being here, present in the boardroom with our directors.
Well, thank you.
We actually appreciate having you here. I appreciate having you here.
Okay, thank you
That's
very
nice.
much. Right, so I think we're queued up for the presentation. So this is our normal monthly operational update. But if we can turn to the next slide. Yeah, on page 68. The May average turbidity was around 18.5 NTU and up from 16 NTU from the previous month. You can see from the graph that the turbidity has remained to be unstable, as you are aware. And this is similar on the solids loading, which is on the next page. That shows the influence TSS value. The May average was about 36 ppm, which is still more than double or about double of what was before our the Hyperion upsets. So throughout May, operations was able to ramp up the solids hauling capability with our working out with a very steady hauling schedule with this hauler. And we were able to start cleaning up and eliminate some of the over recirculations of solids within our system. So we're trying to manage the potable water use still is going on at our satellites. This won't stop until we can really resolve that solids inventory in our system. So we are constantly working with Hyperion staff. I send messages to City of LA and Hyperion and letting them know, hey, we're still getting double the amount of solids. Are there anything going on at your system or facility? So they are aware that we are monitoring very closely. So it has been good impact, and they have responded in a very quick responsible way. The next slide, can we turn to the next slide? This is our highlights for the monthly maintenance activities for the month of May. Obviously, there was a leak that developed at ECL, and this leak is a pipe leak, and it is on our transfer line from the intermediate storage basin to provide the influent for our barrier RO trains. We had to coordinate with the contractor that we were having issues because all the contractors are very busy. But we were finally able to have a contractor on site, and we had to excavate down to 8 feet, and so sorings was needed and everything. We were able to finally locate the leak and repair the hole that were on the pipe, and the repair was completed on May 26th. To the next slide. This is a highlight on the Hyperion Pump 3 motor fire incident that I believe you were made aware of. The fire took place on May 7th, and we were notified at around 2 p.m. The Los Angeles Fire Department responded and put out the fire around 2:35 p.m. BOLA staff were on site to inspect and assess the situation and condition after the scene was released to West Basin and Veolia. Motor 3 was electrically disconnected by West Basin Motor Contractor on the 17th, and then it was mechanically disconnected by Bonds, which is our pump contractor. On the inspection was done on the 24th. The preliminary inspection results points to a failure. If you look at the picture on the left, there was a failure on the ODE, which is opposite drive end guide bearing that keeps the shaft in the center. Apparently, there is a failure with those bearing, and it allowed the rotors now to start making contact with the stator. And that created a very high temperature conditions and resulted in failure of those bearing and allowed the oil to leak down the shaft, empty out the top reservoir, and which created the fire. Currently, we just know that half of the story. We're still waiting on the full inspection report to let us know what is the cost of the failure of the ODE. You see on the photos on the right, there's a missing epoxy seal. That's when the high temperature, start melting that seal, and then eventually the oil just leaks from the reservoir. So we already informed Bonds, our pump on-call contractor. So we'll be scheduling them to come and pull the pump as well. We'll need to inspect the pump, because the other possible cause is that the pump itself failed, and which created some vibration, and which may lead to the motor failures as shown here. So we'll inform the board as we know further. Can we turn to the next slide, number 6? This Slide number 6. Thank you. This is,
Before you go on, if I can ask you a question on the pump. Are these the newer pumps that were installed 3 years ago?
now these are the set of older pumps that are on the Hyperion R projects. That's one of the CIP projects on the list. So yes, so these are the older pumps. And this is one of the only other VFD on the old pump stations, because all the other pumps are just constant speed pump. So we utilize that pump a lot. Okay. Okay. This slide, number 6, is really update in regards to our West Basin asset management, computer maintenance, software agreement that is in need of additional funding going forward. We'll come back to the board in the coming months. But as part of the asset management program, we rely on the CMMS software to collect vital and critical data. Like, you know, more and more municipalities are utilizing this. West Basin was one of the first adapters to utilize a computer maintenance work order system. And it used to be called Hanson. And in 2016 timeframe, we were looking into upgrading the system, and staff had compared and evaluated several softwares at that time, and management and the board approved for staff to upgrade to the current Infor IPS, and including service agreements at that time to perform the system migration, modification, and upgrades. And with all the softwares and proprietary softwares that requires, you know, certifications and training to perform any changes. And as part of the new distribution contract operation contracts, the operators were supposed to utilize the CMMS to start collecting maintenance work orders on the distribution systems. So we've been working with Infor to start integrating the distribution assets onto the CMMS. So historically, we have only been managing work order for the treatment, the vertical assets versus the horizontal assets. So we'll need to integrate and migrate the GIS data and include them into the CMMS system. So with that, I'll skip to the next page, next slide. This is another solicitation that brought to the board's attention back in March, and this RFP also was issued on May 26th. And this is really to address a insurance and safety requirement that is required every 5 years. And the consultant will be performing inspection of all the high voltage equipment. As stated, this is required by Cal OSHA and our district's insurance carrier, Aqua JPIA. So the last analysis was done in 2017, so we're up for the 5-year assessment again. So we'll be coming to the board for award approval back in July. So with that, I will turn it over to Jamie to go through the couple of compliance slides.
Thank you, Susanna. Next slide, please. The environmental compliance activities for May include the monthly log reduction value report, the quarterly report and PDS report updates for the barrier, Title 22, and the 2 brine permits. We also had to submit our permit application to renew the LA County Sanitation District permit to discharge into the sewer system. That initially goes through El Segundo, first of all, for plan approval, and then will be forwarded to LA County. One item that did not make the list, but was completed this month, was our Coupa inspection for the Chevron nitrification plant. El Segundo Fire performs that and found no violations. This month was a low sampling month. We only had 442 samples, but we did not have any violations for these sampling events. Yay! Makes my life easy. Next slide, please. We have 2 pending permits for the Carson plant with AQMD. One is for the biofilter permit to operate, and the other is for going to be the new generator, backup generator for phase 4 updates at Carson for construction and to operate. These two were 2 separate permits, but they are being joined together into one public notification that has gone out to the public for everyone within 1,000-foot radius of the property, as well as the parents of anyone attending the school, an elementary school within that area as well. And the school that's in question is Delamo Elementary. The notifications needed to go out before the last day of instruction for LA County Unified. So we just made the deadline. The notifications were sent out, it says by June 6th, but we actually got them out earlier on June 3rd, and they have been starting to be received. So everyone has been notified that these permits are pending and it's open for public comment. And we are good to go for that. So I will now pass this over to Frank.
Thank you, Jamie. Good afternoon again, directors.
sorry.
A quick question. What kind of comments would we expect to get?
For this, we're not going to receive any comment. We will most likely not receive any comments. The notification itself states that there is low possibility for any exceedance of any air quality limits. So this is more of a notification that these permits are just being at a facility near you.
Thank you.
Well, isn't the issue with the generator a particular matter that you notify the community of?
Yes, but since it's not a generator that runs 24/7,
Right,
yes,
emergency basis, etc.
yes. So the permits are available. The notification gives a link to access the permits, so people are able to review them if they have any questions.
The average person will never understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Continuing on with the next slide. This is our monthly update for the potable water customer service. I just wanted to highlight 2 items. First, at WB 6B, Metropolitan Water District replaced a meter for that service successfully in May. And I also wanted to mention that for WB 23A, this is a planned new service for Golden State Water Company in Culver City. And Metropolitan Water District is working on finalizing that design, and we anticipate coming back to the board with an agreement for that later this year. Moving on.
This is a net new service connection?
This will be a new service, yes. Next slide, please. Yes. And this is also our monthly recycled water distribution activity update. This is the work that's implemented by Inframark, as well as our operations technician for the site inspections. I just wanted to highlight that we did have one minor leak last month. This was in El Segundo on Imperial Avenue in California. It was a minor repair that was implemented the following day. Inframark also exercised 31 valves and responded to 642 dig alerts. These are just some photographs of some of the maintenance work that was implemented by Inframark. Next slide, please. And this is for our new recycled water connections. We're currently working with 21 sites, and 4 are currently under construction. And I just want to highlight 2 of those sites. Next slide, please. This is the for the Hollywood Park Retail in Inglewood. This is within the SoFi Stadium development. Staff worked with the developer and the Department of Public Health to conduct the final cross-connection test for this site. So it is approved to use recycled water for irrigation, and they anticipate connecting later this month.
Will also be one that we potentially can celebrate.
Pardon me?
We could potentially celebrate this new service.
Yes. Moving on to the next site is the Torrance Technology Center. This is made up of three new buildings, and this is for landscaping for this site, and staff conducted some site inspections. These are actually of potable water lines to this site. We anticipate that they will connect their irrigation system in July. Moving on to the next slide, please. And that's a table of all the existing recycled water sites that are currently making modifications that we are working with to obtain Department of Public Health approval. And I also just wanted to highlight two sites. Moving on to the next slide. This is for Lusinger High School in Lawndale. And they're currently renovating their sports fields. They're putting in a new irrigation system for recycled water, and they're also going to be installing artificial turf for a new field. And so staff has been going out there to conduct these inspections. So these are some pictures of new recycled water pipelines, as well as non-potable water pipelines that would be used for cooling the artificial turf. Moving on to the next slide. And this is another existing site. This is Grandview Elementary School in Manhattan Beach. That school is undergoing a very big renovation project, which includes new irrigation systems for their fields. And these are some photographs of a recent inspection of the new irrigation pipelines. So that concludes our report, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Director Williams, any questions?
Thank you.
Director Houston, do you have any questions or comments? Are you still with us?
I am, and I do not have any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I do not have any questions. Thank you. Okay. Well, to our last item, which is the information calendar item on capital improvement program update. And there's a lot of information presented there in terms of just general information, but I think we have two key projects, and Mr. General Manager, maybe we just focus on an update on the Linda McDonald Phase 2 extension, and then a little bit about the Casati protection system.
I think we can do that. So with that, we'll turn it over to our engineering team to walk us through those two projects.
You can all go to page 80.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
89. 89. Actually, let's go forward to page 89.
And allow me to mention that Kevin Cullen, our engineering 3, will be joining Wendell in this presentation.
Next slide.
I just wanted to provide that acknowledgement.
I just want to point out a new section in the CIP report. Next slide, please. We're in the process of this scheduling general manager project review meetings. And the first 4 projects that are up for review is the solids handling project, as well as the Chevron nitrification product water tank rehabilitation, as well as the Title 22 filters and R&R system. In addition, from operations, they will be providing some information on the asset management system enhancements. Next slide, please.
And if I may add or interject, if it's okay with the chair. Okay, I appreciate Wendell including this slide and providing the highlights of the upcoming projects that we want to, review internally. And as I conduct the general manager project review meetings, I will be making available seats for the board to participate, up to 2 board members to join in and be able to hear the conversation, perhaps ask questions, and get a little bit more insights into the projects that we're developing. So that way there's more insight as we bring these forward to the E&O committee. And so with that, once we have the dates firmed up, I'll be sending an email out to the full board, and the first board members to respond would be allowed to join us in those 2 seats in that GM review meeting. So thank you again, Wendell, for including that slide.
And now I'd like to hand it over to Kevin Cullen. Give you an update on both the phase 2 expansion and the cathodic protection project.
Thank you, Wendell. Good afternoon, members of the board. As mentioned, I'll be providing an update on the Juanita Melender Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant Phase 2 expansion project. This is a project that's currently in the construction phase. We issued a notice to proceed to our contractor, J.R. Felonk, last July, and construction has been progressing well. The highlights of the project include a new microfiltration system, as well as a new carbon dioxide dosing system and storage system that'll help improve the nitrified water quality, as well as potable water backup to our 3 on-site tanks. So to date, some of the completed construction activities include completion of the chemical storage area structure, the CMF subgrade structure, a majority of the yard piping, majority of the electrical conduit installation, and a significant amount of submittal approvals. Currently, we're working on the remainder of the potable water pipeline installation. We're also getting ready to install the chemical storage tanks, which just arrived last week. Today, we began erecting the CMF metal canopy, and we're continuing with underground electrical duct bank and conduit installation. Looking forward, we'll continue with the ongoing construction activities and look forward to startup and commissioning at the end of 2022. Next slide, please. You can, if you can, advance through the graphics here. I did want to highlight this is the final remaining project under West Basin's project labor agreement that we hold with the Los Angeles and Orange County Building and Construction Trade Councils and signatory craft councils and unions. So some of the highlights here, we have a goal of tier 1, which is local service hours, 30%. And currently, 18% of the man hours provided on site are coming directly out of the West Basin service area. Unfortunately, the Union Hall hasn't been able to provide more construction workers specifically right out of the service area, but they have been able to fill some from LA County. So we have a significant amount of work coming from LA County members, so 63% there. And if you could advance the graphic one more time. A couple more, actually. Apologies. So we're looking currently at an approved local hire rate of about 36%. At risk, we're at 4.5%, which is an increase from 4% last month. So we're trending well there. And there's also a use of apprentices that's required on site of 16.67%, and we are exceeding that at 22%. Next slide, please. As requested during one of the last updates on this project, I think the directors requested a breakdown by division. Currently, you can see the majority of the labor hours coming out of West Basin service area are coming from Division 1 at about 15.4%. Next slide, please. And for back one, please. And furthermore, also requested at a previous update was a breakdown by craft. So you can see here the majority of the work on site being performed currently is from laborers, haulers, and carpenters, supplemented by cement masons and operating engineers. Next slide, please. This is a time lapse that focuses on the CEMF area, just so you can see some of the progress to date. This is a singular photo on each day, so it'll progress rather quickly.
Kevin, what we're looking at is the pad for the CMF system.
Yeah, sorry, my screen is a little frozen. Yeah, currently where we're at today, you can see we've completed all the subgrade structure, the equipment pads have been placed, and today we began erecting the metal canopy. Next slide, please. If you can advance through the there you go. As far as updates, the total contractual schedule for this project is 660 days. Today, we're almost exactly halfway through that schedule. As far as the construction contract, J.R. Phelong holds a construction contract with the value of about 21 million. Today, they've earned about 5.5 million to date. As far as RFIs go, we've received a total of 126 with the help of our construction management team and engineering staff. We've processed 121, and then on the submittal side, a total of 207, and we've processed 199. Next slide, please. Here's some neat photos for some of the stuff that's been occurring on site. Last week, we took delivery of 4 FRP tanks. Those include 2 20,000 gallon sodium hydroxide bulk storage tanks that'll be in the new chemical storage area, as well as 3 process tanks that'll be located at the CEMF area. Next slide, please. A couple other photos here. We have the installation of the feed piping that will feed the new CEMF system, as well as the chemical storage area I just mentioned. Next slide, please. And finally, this was a panoramic shot taken from that time-lapse photo, and you can see the progress that was made just today alone on erecting that metal canopy. So pretty exciting stuff out there. Next slide, please. I'd like to provide an update on our recycled water distribution system, cathodic protection system improvements project.
Kevin, if I can interrupt you before you move on, maybe we can just ask questions about the respective projects. Do you have any questions on this one, Director Williams?
No.
How about you, Director Houston?
No, thank you.
Okay. Just kind of trying, because it's about halfway through time-wise, but build is about 1/4. So I just want to kind of walk through and clarify. Basically, what's done is the yard piping, the substructure work, and the conduits. Is that a good summary of the major components of construction that have been completed to date?
Yeah, I would say the bulk of the yard piping has been completed to date. We still have a ways to go as far as electrical duct banks go. There's a few process piping, but yeah, the bulk of the yard piping's been done.
Okay.
If I can add some insight.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if I could add some insight on the billing progress, I think what you're seeing there a lot is, we've approved submittals for a lot of the equipment, but we haven't taken delivery of nearly any equipment yet. In fact, the FRP storage tanks were the first big items to show up on site. So as those show up on site, I expect the billing to ramp up.
So the other question I have is just for clarification. In the earned to date, that is the amount that's been billed and processed, not necessarily what's been earned if you were to stop the project today.
Correct. That is the amount of work that has been completed and billed.
So
there's
like whatever work's going on now, or since the last billing, would still then be accruing. This to date is as of the last billing. I just want to make sure I understand where we're at.
Correct. Yeah, that would be through April 30th. Our construction management team is still processing the May invoice for our review. So that would be through April 30th, earned to date.
Okay. And you showed pictures of the tanks, so I guess the tanks were just delivered, the crane moving them around.
Kevin, can you hear us?
No, I did not catch that. Can you please repeat that?
Oh, I just said, Kevin, so the tanks were just delivered? The chemical storage tanks, did you have a picture of those? So those were just delivered in the last few days?
Correct. I think they came on site on May 26th.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about the exotic protections.
Alrighty.
Just
Now I'm on
packet page 99.
99.
Thank you, Barco. High level overview, our cathodic protection system improvements project. We're looking at repairing or replacing various cathodic protection systems across the entire distribution system. This includes work at a total of 277 locations across 12 different cities and jurisdictions. So to date, we've completed nearly all of the anode installation and discontinuous joint testing. We have one final work permit that we're seeking right now with the city of Inglewood, and we are going through the system activation and final testing. Looking forward, we're going to wrap up the remaining few anode installations, continue the system activation, and wrap up the project. Next slide, please. I'll start with the photos on the right-hand side. I wanted to include a few images of what these CP systems look like. You can see some testing that's ongoing. Typically in one of our CP test stations, you'll see a bundle of wires. The red wires showed there are different anode leads. The black wires are structure wires, and the yellow one is a reference cell, which helps with the accuracy of the testing. So to date on the cathodic protection project, the contract is for 493 days. To date, about 465 days have elapsed. That's 94% of the construction contract. As far as construction costs, 70% have been earned to date. A lot of money has been withheld until the final system testing reports are received and the systems are considered complete. As far as RFIs go, we've received a total of 49 and processed 46 to date. And as far as submittals go, relatively low submittal count for this project as it's a lot of repeat work. So we've received a total of 33 and processed 32 to date. Next slide, please. Also included a few construction photos to kind of walk through the process of what a typical cathodic protection station installation looks like. First step is they drill a vertical shaft, typically about 20 to 30 feet deep, depending on the number of anodes. That's what you can see on the first photo on the left-hand side there. Doing the anode installations. Following that, they will excavate to the pipe, which is typically in the street. It will weld 2 new structure wires on. These are thermite welds. These black structure wires are then run back to the test station, also located behind the curb, encased in conduit, which you can see on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. After the conduit is ran back to the curb, the trench is backfilled, compacted, and repaved, and those are the photos you can see there. So a lot of repeat work. We've done a lot of installations of this, and T. Roberts has been a good contractor to work with thus far. I believe that is the end of the update for the cathodic protection system project. I'd be happy to take any questions.
You have any questions?
Well, thank you.
Director Houston, you have any questions?
No, thank you.
I would kind of just point of interest for myself, if nothing else. On the RFIs, how many RFIs generate additional change orders? Or requests for additional compensation?
I would say only a handful. Most of them are just seeking guidance. But I would say, yeah, only a handful, particularly in this project. What we've found is a few of these structure wires have been broken between the testing phase we completed in 2018, 2019 until now. And that typically happens with some of the older systems. The structure wires previously were not placed in conduit. So when other projects come through and trench through, a lot of the times the structure wire gets broken. So we found a few instances on this project of broken structure wires and had to do a little bit of additional work through change orders that way.
Okay, thank you.
Would you be interested in the same kind of question for the JMM expansion project?
It's a question of interest, but just because of the type of project that this is, it would tend to generate more extra work reducing RFIs. So anyways, thank you very much, Kevin. I guess with that, we're wrapped up for the evening. So last item up is director comments. Do you have any comments, Director Williams?
Well, thank you.
Director Houston, do you have any comments?
No further comments to add. Thank you.
Okay, I did skip over closed session, but we have none. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, for
There is an NBA game going on.
semifinals night. Thank you, staff, for a
Game
really
three.
great presentation. All right.
It started at 6.